Mr. Ashok Desai, distinguished invitees, judges, lawyers, administrators, the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi, and friends. It is a singular honor to be asked to give the Justice V.M. Tarkunde Memorial Lecture, and I offer to the Foundation and to Ms. Manik Karanjawala my sincerest thanks. But it is also a test, and a rather unfair test, for the standards of courage in thought and action set by Justice Tarkunde are mighty tough. No Tarkunde lecturer can tiptoe around the subject or look over the shoulder before speaking. He would not be fit to be a Tarkunde lecturer. I know I cannot, not from this podium, follow the advice given famously in the Raj Kapoor song, "E bhai, zara dekh kar chalo." You know the songs. Aage bhi nahi, पीछे भी, दाएं भी नहीं, बाएं भी, ऊपर ही नहीं, नीचे भी. Hey bhai. Now bhai and bhai are very closely related. So when thinking of what subject would be appropriate for this Tarkunde lecture, I knew that it would have to do with India today, with the connections between the state and society, between people who think deeply about India, who may not have the chance or the opportunity or even the temperament to act, but who are deeply concerned about it, and the state, which has its own very clear path today on where the country should go. And with Justice Tarkunde's aura and gaze hovering over the evening, the title India versus India suggested itself to me. I had not long ago spoken on India versus the Union of India, but that had a different remit. So India versus India sounds like a litigious title. Do I mean by it that despite the money and the strain involved in litigation, despite all the time that it takes up, legal action is a favorite Indian habit amounting to an addiction? That we as a people delight in taking one another, especially relatives, to court? Or that the Indian state routinely fills its already overcrowded jails with more and ever more under trials, many if not most of them innocent? In truth, I believe all this to be fairly accurate. If we were to roll all Indians who are plaintiffs and respondents into two giant collectivities, we would have India versus India, a Mahabharata of Mahabharats that neither Ramanand Sagar nor Peter Brooks would be able to handle. Next to temples, mosques, gurudwaras, the most favored recourse today is the Nyayalaya. We can add hospitals. But we can be in a generalization with exceptions discounted as a people, describe ourselves as Vivadi, Adalatbaz. Where but in India would private perceptions of the public's interest or the public's interest in individual hurt or the travails of an identifiable group become a whole genre of transformative litigation, namely the PIL? If the Awam seems to be an adept in litigation, the state is on board as well, keeping hundreds of thousands of lawyers in silk, keeping attorneys general, advocates general, solicitors general, their additionals and alternatives, and a platoon of public prosecutors and standing counsel ceaselessly, sleeplessly, and thanklessly occupied. Together they keep notaries public ready with ink pad and stamp paper, clerks in the kindergarten of the law but postdocs in the legal system, tippity-tappeting away on their Remington or Olivetti typewriters in little cubicles, rolling out wakalats, affidavits, counters, anticipatory bail applications, now in panic over the famine of the 50 rupee note, 20s, tenors, and the most prized of all, that blue note we never thought was going to be our very life. Ik sauda note please, bas thank you Soniye. The precarious car slots for the judges outside courts, beside a mayhem of misparked cars, autos, media OB vans, motorcycles, fruit juice, tea and chaat vendors all around. And oh, that streaming, threading course of humans with grim determination in shiny black coats and white shirts, heading towards the equivalent of the Sarvodaya of a foggy morning in Kashi, which is the courtroom where the judge enters, chatter stops, laughter freezes, and milord, we have India versus India. Our laws, our courts, judges and lawyers are not about litigation alone. They have led to decisive and courageous interventions. They have nursed foresight, gestated evolution, protected the intelligence that conserves, and the wisdom that reforms. Hussain Ara Khatun versus the state of Bihar gives us an example. Kapila Hingorani's petition on behalf of several petitioners won for 40,000 prisoners release. India versus India stood in Hussain Ara in the shape of a thirst for insaf versus a fatalistic surrender to Kismat. The desire for insaf, including the courage to fight for insaf, is one part of the Indian psyche. The fatalistic belief in Kismat, karma, is another important part of the Indian psyche. One is pitted against the other. Both represent India. The India of revolution, of reform, and the India of acceptance. Today, it is a wonder that the people of India have not risen in some kind of mass protest against the famine of simple currency. Do we admire them for their patience, or do we lament their acceptance? One does not know. Both are India, and both are pitted against the other. Every society, each generation knows men and women who have had courage, who have had conscience. Our laws and our courts have judged issues on the claims of two faculties which make humans into what they are. IQ, which everybody knows means what it means, and MQ, the moral quotient. The combination of the intelligence quotient and the moral quotient makes a person like Justice Tarkunde so unique. Every society, as I said, knows men and women of high IQs and men and women of high MQs. And very significantly, with both IQs and high MQs working together means that it feels great and can feel great to be smart, but it also feels good and really good to have a sense of right and wrong. Such persons are few in number, but they are there. They express their views without hesitation. Ever since Gandhi used the phrase keeper of my conscience or conscience keeper for Rajagopalachari, that phrase conscience keeper has been overdone. That is one of the many hassles which Gandhi has provided for us. Now every blunder has to be, thanks to Gandhi, a Himalayan blunder. And every hollow promise, thanks to Gandhi, has to be a post-dated check. And as to that poor old Western civilization, it is forever a doomed good idea. But overuse is no reason why we should not use the phrase conscience keeper for a person like Justice Tarkunde. Jayaprakash Narayan was one exceptional conscience keeper to our beloved India. JP had humor in him, and he could laugh at his own sorrows. But essentially, he was the most earnest man I've ever met. JP and Justice Tarkunde knew each other very well, worked together, and would have understood what I'm trying to mean by the great schism in India today. And one should not use in propriety medical phrases, and I mean this very seriously as a suggestion to myself. One should not use medical phrases like, we are schizophrenic, because that is a very serious condition. Or that this particular condition, it's a disease like leprosy. We should not use those conditions, those use phrases. So I'm not saying that we are a schizophrenic people, but we are a deeply divided people, psychologically, in our political makeup and in our social makeup. JP knew that India was one thing in Delhi, another in the provinces. He had it in him to realize that an India versus India situation existed in Kashmir. And he said to Kashmiris, these are not his exact words, but the phrases are not his, the idea and the spirit is his. He could tell the Kashmiris, you know Pakistan and what it has done to you. You know India and what it did for Kashmir in 1947-48. You and I, this is JP speaking, can be proud of the Indian officers and Jawans who laid down their lives here, staving the invaders off. But later, this JP continuing, things have happened between India and you that should not have happened. I am ashamed of those. I know you mistrust India. I know you have reason to mistrust India. And that is because India sees Kashmir as part of its map, whereas it should have seen itself, that is India, as part of Kashmir's mind. Your shikaras, your bukharas, your walnuts, your carpets, your summer breeze, your winter snows have gone into India's consciousness. But India's great constitution, its independent judiciary, its free media, its resurgent womanhood has not entered Kashmir's minds. This is not your fault, JP would tell them. It is India's fault. The way Sheikh Sahib was treated, the way you allowed India to turn your elections into farces, to hurt your izzat. Your Kashmiriyat was hurt. But please, please do recognize the fact that India is a republic whose conscience, though often asleep, even comatose, can be easily awakened. If shown its error, India can correct its methods. I will do my best to help it do so, said JP to Kashmir. Trust India, trust me, but for God's sake, do not, and I repeat, do not go with some delusive dreams which can become horrible nightmares. That was India versus India, trying the non-litigious road of mediation. And at another end of the country, JP told the diverse Naga people, similarly, something like, and again these are not his exact words, but certainly his exact message. India, JP would tell the Naga, India can go wrong. India cannot be evil. He knew his India, north, south, east, west. He knew its boundaries and neighbors. But friends, this is not a lecture on Jayaprakash Narayan. I'm talking about the knowledge that India is not just one mass of people who can be led by one country, one leader, be he Gandhi, be he Nehru, or be he anybody else. India is far too complicated and complex, so deeply cloven that it is most difficult and most compelling, most challenging, and in a way most endearing when it is pitted against itself. It is easier to work against the state than it is to work against an intolerant society. I say this in the knowledge of the fact that we are now living in a country where the state is extremely sensitive to criticism, and where intolerance seems to be a miasma that rolls down from the houses of power in Delhi to the gullies of all its cities. But yet I would say this: an intolerant state can be opposed to one's great difficulty, but an intolerant society is to be opposed with even greater difficulty. I mentioned Chitto Jatha Bhoy Shunya. The next line is Uchcho Jatha Shir, where the head is held high. Now, it is not as if India is just about problems and difficulties. There's so much that is happening around us which uplifts us, which makes us lift our heads up. Chitto Jatha Bhoy Shunya. Uchcho Jatha Shir. When does that happen? Do we remember last when we had Uchcho Jatha Shir? I'm not talking of those who worship certain political idols, but Uchcho Jatha Shir. Yes. Let me give you my favorite examples. When Sakshi and Sindhu win medals for India Olympics, when Saina soars, and when Dilip Tirke, the great hockey champion and MP, sets about organizing a tribal village hockey tournament for villagers from Odisha, Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh, and says the youth of this region should pick up hockey sticks instead of guns. I am Uchcho Jatha Shir. And when Uday Kumar, some of us may not know the name. I mean, we are into currency in the deepest sense. Morning, evening and night we're thinking of the blues and the pinks. And the person who designed that fantastic logo, which combines the Roman R with the Nagari R, with the 2 dashes of the dollar, yen and sterling slashing it, Uday Kumar. Brilliant, that design is. And when, I may say, an academic of the distinction of Nayanjot Lahiri is awarded for her magnificent work on Ashoka, the American Historical Association's Richards Prize for the best book in South Asia, Uchcho Jatha Shir. But boy, oh boy, a Kashmiri Pandit in the valley, in his own home, is in bhai. A Kashmiri Muslim in Jammu is in khauf. A Naga in Manipur is in fear. Manipuri in Manipur itself is in fear. When the Kaveri fever climbs, Kannadigas in Chennai and Tamil Nadu and Tamilians in Bangalore are gripped by fear. You know, Karnataka number plates disappear from Tamil Nadu streets. Tamil Nadu number plates disappear from Bangalore roads. Fear, India versus India. Are we not one country? Dalits in Bihar have been in bhai of organizations like the Ranveer Sena since they can remember. But Senas are a factor in Indian life, political, social and cultural. What music one may hear, who may or may not act in films, are all subjects of Senaic fatwas, the wrong word, wrong language. Senai Nidesh in Mumbai or in Bangalore. To them may be added, we need some humor. So to them may be added the devotional fervor of an earnest group called the Hindu Sena, which organized, to my great relief as a de-stressor, a yagna in Jantar Mantar some weeks ago for Donald Trump's victory. Who are our Senas fighting? Who are our Senas defending? India versus India is all one can say by way of answer. Being in a minority in India is not an ethnic condition, as much as it is a circumstantial state. You can be in a majority one moment, in a minority the next. In the same train journey, you can be in a minority and change into a majority. You can carry your minoritism in you, you can carry your bhai in you. A divisive India, a suspicious India, a fearful India is in potentiality always in reality pitted against a diverse India, the India that trusts, helps and supports. Which is why Acharya Kripalani once famously said, गांधी ने बड़ी भूल करी. गांधी ने हमसे सबको सिखाया कि दुश्मनों से कैसे दोस्ती करें. उसने ये नहीं सिखाया कि अपनों से कैसे दोस्ती करें. Partition redrew India's map. Polarization is redrawing India's mind. Extremists on both sides of the Hindu-Muslim divide are at it, and vigorously. India versus India is nowhere more visible today than in the recent re-invoking of the demand for a uniform civil code. At a public meeting in Chennai yesterday, Dr. Faizan Mustafa, Vice Chancellor of the Nalsar Law University in Hyderabad, reminded his audience that those organizations who are today asking for a common civil code are the same or descended from those that had vigorously opposed the Hindu Code Bill in 1949. The surge in the Hindu right of compassion for Muslim women will sound less unconvincing if it is accompanied by simultaneous concern for gender rights in India across religions as a whole. The Indian state and the ruling party at the center should be uniform about reform. Equal representation should be a call along with uniform laws. Are Muslims represented anywhere near their proportion to their population in our parliament, in our assemblies, in the bureaucracy, the police and judiciary? Whether they are Hindu or Muslim or whatever, opponents of the triple talaq should also oppose the obscuring of Muslims, the dispelling of Muslims, the expelling of Muslims from Indian polity and Indian society. And here it needs to be said in the same breath that Muslim responses to the Uniform Civil Code idea's revival will be greatly strengthened if Muslim opinion acknowledges in all fairness and objectivity that in the matter of post-divorce maintenance and security, a great deal of improvement within the Muslim fold is indeed overdue. Likewise, Muslim aspirations for equal opportunities in the Indian polity and in its social and economic organizations need to be paralleled in the Muslim community's eagerness to end the huge disparities in itself. The rich-poor divide in India's Muslim population. The gulf between the Persian, Arabic, Urdu-speaking Muslims and, for instance, the Tamil-speaking and the Malayalam-speaking Muslims is phenomenal. And in action taken against terror suspects, it is the poor Muslim who has to prove innocence first. And if the swagger of Dharma gurus in Hindu India more than meets its match anywhere, it is in the disproportionate hold of Islamic clerics in the life of the Muslim population. The grip of religious leaders on the thoughts and fears, suspicions and frictions of ordinary Indians of all denominations is increasing and threatens to widen disparities and deepen obscurantism and, above all, patriarchy. The illiberal majority's minority baiting must not be matched by the illiberal minority's silence and inaction in areas where reform is due. Homogenizing diversity is not a step in equality. It is a design in domination. Equally, keeping much needed reform out is not a step in minority self-protection. It is a sign of regressive self-isolation. Freedom and evolution go together. India is versus India when one Indian community bullies another Indian community into conformity or submission. India is versus India when one Indian community bullies its own constituents into conformity or submission. Friends, India is exploited, misused and disfigured by India. I'm leaving politics aside in society and moving to a different plane which unites all of us in shame. Where is India suicidal? Our tobacco, gutka, plastic and construction lobbies enjoy an indemnity unheard of anywhere else in the world. All of them are striking at the heart of India. The sources of our breath, of the water we drink and give to our children and our grandchildren, contain either their products or their effluents or their debris or all of them. We are breathing toxins, drinking the most harmful substances that can be imagined. And as my city of Chennai, which choked on its own real estate jungle last year, knows, we are being sucked into our own chortling sewers. All of us use sewers. We do not know where the sewers end. They end in our hearts. Nowhere in India is India its own enemy as much as in its losing battle against the despoliation of its physical environment. We need chastising. We are all, because of not doing enough or not doing it in time, sinning against our own children and grandchildren. India is, may I say it, India is cannibalizing itself. Who will file a PIL for India's natural resources? Who will file a PIL for life? India is the subject of our thoughts today. India is in peril. And I say this non-politically, but I say this civilizationally. And I know Justice Tarkunde would have liked it to be said exactly like that, but with a legal purpose to that statement. I do not know when our travails with our neighbor Pakistan will end, whether war will engulf us before our own little man-made battle with simple cash ends. But all that apart, the great embattlements of India within its own heart, with its own conscience, are tearing us apart. We live in a false sense of well-being. Our happinesses are cosmetic. Our joys are plastic. Our sorrows and our fears and our dangers are for real. But I was told by a friend that before I end, I must end on a positive note. I shall not do it because she suggested it. I shall do it because India believes in rebirth. Something which my late brother Ramachandra Gandhi, better known as Ramu, said, rebirth can never be proved, but it can never be disproved. And he said, India is not meant to perish. Why? Why, Ramu? Why do you say India is not meant to perish? Why? Because it is not meant to perish. Please, that's a copping out answer, I said. And he said, you know why? I said, no, why? Because this is the land where the Buddha trod. This is the land where the Buddha trod. This is the land where the Buddha trod.